Monica McNutt eloquently spoke up about this yesterday on First Take, on Shannon Sharp's show. You know, it's unfair, the narrative that's being created. And I want to be clear, what happened with Chennedy Carter is confirmation bias, because it was a narrative that was being spun before that incident, but no one could give you an example. Their examples were Diana Taurasi or Cheryl Swoops, right? Like, you're never going to get me at all with Diana. To me, you just don't know Diana. So her tone, her delivery bothered you. That's because you're not familiar with Diana. That's just how she talks. All right, y'all got to get over that, right? It's like, y'all got to get over women. I know sometimes there's people, like, when I tweet and I like curse on Twitter, I do things and they're just like, why are you so angry? I'm not angry, bro. Like, I just effing curse. Like, I'm sorry, I'm from New York, we curse. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, meet some other woman and learn that we're not all dainty and, you know, like, that's not me. That's not Diana. You know what I'm saying? But she wasn't hating on her, and she's been factually correct. The reason why I said, like, I'm never going to give you Diana, because with Swoops, I don't think people realize, like, these people are, like, have played at the highest level. They are competitors. Like, they ain't trying to hear nobody tell them about who's great. Like, when Michael Jordan says, no, Steph Curry's not in this place yet, no one goes around saying, Michael Jordan's hating on Steph Curry, aside from Steph Curry fans, right? Like, bro, like, these are people who played at the highest level. Like, you're not going to get them impressed with somebody. Like, you got to come and prove it to them. They're not giving you that acknowledgement. But when men do this, we don't jump and say they are jealous. And the jealous description is always applied to women. And that's my frustration. So it's not even that there may not be some people who are jealous, but you cannot actually give me examples of that. These are things that you've interpreted, not you. I'm saying people. You didn't like how Diana said something, so she must be jealous, right? She's going out of her way. What going out of her way? She was asked a question. Scott Van Pelt asked her a question which she addressed not only about Catlin Clark, but also about Camila Cardozo. Likewise, Cheryl Swoops, when she spoke, she was also speaking about Angel Reese. Yet, that always gets lost in the conversation. So are they hating on both of them, or is it just Catlin? Because y'all are not going crazy about this when the comments she made about Angel Reese, and you're not going crazy about what Diana said about Camila Cardozo. Literally, both players' names were made in the same statement. Okay, so those are your examples. I already explained why those are not good examples. They don't hold up. So what are your examples? A Brianna Stewart scream? Like, are we serious? What are the hard fouls? What are the hating statements, the jealousy statements? They just did not exist until Chennedy Carter comes along, right? And now it's confirmation bias. She gives you the example you need to claim everyone is doing this, and that's problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, it's definitely unfortunate because now, yes, we do have the confirmation bias, but I think in a way there's almost it's not a silver lining. This whole situation has obviously been pretty toxic and just not ideal, the way that it's been discussed and things like that. But I think what it has done is it's hopefully allowed a space to discuss the full picture, which I hope we can get to. And it's that Catlin is not a victim as a rookie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Speak.
She's not a victim. So even in this situation with Chennedy, we already talked about it, but just to contextualize it here, she was talking trash, which is sure, that's part of the game. But then when you also elbow people and then you keep on talking all the way down the court, like, you're not a victim. So then for you to go into the post game and be like, yeah, well, you know, and like when you're asked about it and you go, just, I don't want to retaliate. Like, I know people are going to come for me and I just got to let it be what it is. But the people that retaliate are the ones that get in trouble.
Like Catlin.
Like, that's not, that to me, like, I hope we can just talk about that now, because it's like, this is a great example, Catlin, of how you're not a victim if you're instigating, right? Like,
and you're weaponizing right now how people whether it's your privilege, your, I don't, whatever it is, but you're weaponizing how people view you and are talking about you when you say something like that. It actually really annoyed me. It's similar to Christy Sides and what she was saying, because like, she's not a victim, not by any means. And I want you to contextualize this. So I want you to continue with your point, but you said something earlier and I want to like connect all of this together, right? Because we have a saying, I don't know if it's just in the Black community, but we have a saying, right? And it's like, F around,
find out.
F around and finds out. And you F'd around with the wrong person, right? Chennedy is an isolated incident. And again, no, I'm not saying, first of all, I am downplaying this a little bit because let's just be clear, Catlin tried to flop. She tried to flop on what happened. Like that little shoulder bump, it was not that serious. Okay, Catlin, I need you to be all the way serious and for real, okay? You fell down, the first thing you did is, and you look to the damn refs to give you what? That's what happened. And you look, and that's what she always does, right? She's always falling to the floor, and then people acting like it's mad hard. It's like, yo, it's like, pay attention to what she did in college. That is what she did, right? She's from the LeBron school, the Luka school, the Harden school. They try to sell fouls, right? And a lot of these players, they watch the NBA more than they watch the WNBA. I would say that her coach did not do a good job preparing her for the physicality of what was to come and what to expect in the WNBA. So that's one. So yes, was it out of bounds? But like, bro, we see harder stuff than this all the time in games. So yeah, I'm kind of saying like, this is not that deep. It's a little hip check, assess the flagrant, whatever you want to call it. You didn't. This happens in the NBA. You reassess on the back end and you move on. Like, this should not elevate to the conversation of CNN and all of this nonsense. But the reason I said you effed around with the wrong person, because Chennedy described herself as a dog. I'm going to use her words, and I'm going to say research and look up Chennedy, because like some people saying, oh, she's just averaging like 12 points, don't know who she is. And I'm glad you set the context for who she is as a player. But this is like, for anybody who's new here, right? Because there might be some people who are just new to basketball, but I'm going to say to men maybe, or people who watch the NBA who's new here, right? Like, there's kind of like street ball, right? There's like the Rucker. It's a famous park in New York. Like, Chennedy can go play in the Rucker. Catlin Clark can't, right? She's just not about that life. And I don't mean that in a negative way. So when we talk about these players, we talk about bagged, like we reference a group of people who tweet on Twitter. We say, oh, bag Twitter, right? Like when James Harden, and I'm using the NBA intentionally to contextualize this, but when James Harden talked about Giannis and was basically like, what does he do? Like, he just like runs into people. He's not skilled, right? Things like that. That is not true, but that's because there's a certain type of player who has that mindset, like James Harden, right? When people think of people like Kyrie Irving, they have a bag. Chennedy Carter has a bag. She is a bucket getter. And the players who play like that, usually, they don't respect certain types of players. This is not about Catlin specifically. Like, if you play a certain brand of basketball and style, they're just like, so when she posts later and says, what else does she do besides shoot threes? I understand why people might look at that and say she's hating, but you just got to understand she don't respect that type of hoop, right? Like, and people don't respect, there's a lot of players that don't respect Stephen Curry playing that type of hoop. Tracy McGrady, like, he's the king of like, he's not here, he's not this. What? This is the first guy who's going to be a unanimous MVP? Like, there's certain types of players that just don't find that brand of basketball to be a thing. I don't agree with them. I'm a huge Steph Curry fan, so I understand why people love what Catlin Clark is doing. But I'm just saying, this is a hooper's mindset. We don't have to get all into the like, immediately jump to it being jealousy, immediately jump to all these other things, because in her mind, she's like, what the hell do I have to be jealous of Catlin Clark for? I mean, y'all may not think about it like that, but she's like, that girl can't hoop better than me, whether that's based in reality or not. This is not what we're talking about. I'm saying that's just her mindset. That's a hooper's mindset. And the way we think about men, and when they talk about that, y'all got to start applying these same conversations to women. That's what I'm saying. So I'm sorry.
You're fine. I mean, honestly, on that same point, you kind of did a good job already contextualizing what I was trying to get at with Catlin. It's like, you talking and you mess around and find out, you elbow and you doing all that. That's a bigger conversation that I'm hoping now we have the door open to discuss. Same thing with against the Seattle Storm. Okay. She had a double text situation. Okay. And there was talking on both ends. She was penalized for that. So obviously she did something wrong. You know what I'm saying? And even in that situation, when she was chirping, she's chest to chest with this Storm player. And you do have Aaliyah Boston in that situation kind of pull her away. But I think you even saw in that moment, Caitlin is not cut like that. Like whatever was said in response to her, she did not look ready to rise to the occasion of whatever that interaction was going to be. So to me, it's like, let's stop doing that. Like, let's not go in these games and instigate, talk mess and all this stuff and then not own up to it. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what she said in that interaction that got her the tech. We don't know what she said that led, I mean, we know the elbow, right? But we don't know what she said, chirping all the way down to the court, that led to Chennedy kind of doing what she did, which again was wrong. Because I really don't want it to get misconstrued at the end of this. And they're like, wow, you guys are defending.
Well, we've said
whatever.
We've said it a million times.
Yeah.
So they're going to either ignore that or hear it. Like, we're not going to oversay it. We've stated
one part of it. But I think also too, it's like, to your point about there is just a certain basketball layer to all of this that I hope we will accept. Like you mentioned Kennedy's bag. Guess what else? Chennedy is swole. That girl, you can tell she's in the gym. Look at the guards in the WNBA. Look at Jackie Young. Now, Jackie Young from the Aces is obviously a different example because that girl be in the gym. Like her teammates will joke about the consistently. Obviously, I cover the Aces. Asia Wilson was at a press conference recently and she was like, can somebody get Jackie? She's probably over there lifting weights. That's a joke, but it's not really a joke. Like, to be a guard in this league, you're going to have to put on some weight from your college experience. It's not the same. You're going to get pushed up on and roughed up on. And I'm sure other people have already said this, but it's like, that's something that she's going to have to adjust to as well. That's why Chennedy had that moment in the presser that we played at the beginning of this, where she goes, I'm going to respond. Like,
exactly.
if somebody, right, you know what I'm saying? Because she can. So it's like, and not everybody can do that. And maybe Caitlin's not at that point yet. But if you're going to instigate, let's maybe wait until we're ready to respond. Caitlin can't physically do that right now. So it's like she's setting herself up. And I don't get what's the point of that. If it's not to like play this victim role and then we're flopping a lot, like it to me, it seems so counterintuitive unless the goal really is to like what is our goal here? Are we trying to permeate a narrative? I mean, at this point, that's what she's doing. She's going in these post-game preferences and being like, I feel like I'm getting hammered. I feel like I'm getting whatever. And it's like, you don't see players like Angel Reese, like great example from Angel's part. She mentioned Alyssa Thomas. She got right back up. That John Cole Jones situation.
She was smiling.
Right. And even the John Cole Jones situation, she got up laughing.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Right. So yes, I don't know. I don't know if she smiled with the Alyssa Thomas thing. That was like a hard hit.
It was, but John Cole's what I was referring to. She got her behind knocked to the floor, and she got up laughing.
Exactly, and she's not going on these press conferences playing the victim. And so I just pray, and this is not a criticism of Caitlin per se. She's not obligated to do anything. She doesn't have to go in these post-game press conferences and say anything. But I think it would behoove her at this point to like drop that act. I don't want to call it an act, but that's the best turn of phrase I have right now.
I mean, like if it walks like if it talks like because it's been repeated now. And there's been other comments from her too, like, yeah, I think people are getting away with things they wouldn't normally get away with. No, Caitlin, they're not. And this is why before I was saying like, she just doesn't know better, but it's just been too many comments now after each game that I don't believe that, because you're like, okay, I'm just gonna have to deal with it, but then you complain about being hammered, or I'm glad that Christy said something, because it's like, all right, I just need you to go get your weight up, right? And that will happen. And yeah. I'm just over it. So I know that this is my tone and my demeanor right now is not going to receive well. And I'm here to tell y'all I don't give a F, right? Like, I don't care, because I'm over it. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to talk about her and analyze her the way that I do other players, right? Yeah. In the men's league and in the women's league. And, I think it's an important point that you make about Angel Reese and mindset, and the fact that, because Angel knows what we know and understand, right? Aside from the fact that Angel's just like, this is hoop, this is what goes down, she shut down the reporter very quickly around Alyssa Thomas. initially when that foul happened, because Angel Reese, as a black woman, understands the importance of not depicting her and harping on that and doing those things, because in this predominantly black league, people are going to take that and run with it and describe Alyssa in a certain way. And so when Catlin and her coach feed into these narratives, it's only resulting in negative publicity. You know, when the GM of the Fever tweets and he's like, this is not our league. Well, I don't know how long you've been GMing, but bro, this is actually the WNBA. This is exactly what it is. It is a physical league. And the very last point I just want to make, because it's like, you're going to keep cashing checks, Catlin. You know, you're going to keep writing checks you cannot cash. And then what happens is the expectation is we're her teammates. And like, nothing irks me more than that right now. Like, like, I'm tired of hearing about how her teammates have to come to defend her, because for one, you already brought up like Aaliyah Boston. As soon as her and Victoria Vivians got into that, Aaliyah went right over there, pulled her away, was talking to her. You know, Aaliyah is not an enforcer. Okay, let's just be clear about that. She's not an enforcer. That is not her personality. I'm not sure if there is someone on the Indiana Fever, but we should not expect that. And what I mean by that is, this is not like the NBA where there's people you can just waste a roster spot on. They don't make the same kind of money. And at that point in the game, Aaliyah was in foul trouble, and she was the only teammate that was even in distance. So now she goes over there and catches a foul for some reason, or in game does an extra hard foul to get back. Now they lose their defensive anchor, the person who was really helping them and steadying them in that game. And then what? Then y'all would be saying, why did she go and get herself suspended? And now not suspended, but kicked out or fouled or whatever. And now they lost the game. So it's a double-edged sword. So I don't want to hear about that, because Aaliyah has spoken up for her on the court, off the court. So has Nalissa Smith. I've seen her grab the mic in a post game and say stuff before. So people are reacting to a clip on social media. You're not watching the full game. You're not listening to both games. You're not watching everything to see how her teammates have stood up for her. You see one clip and then you say, oh, they're not standing up for her. Did Catlin go stand up for Aaliyah Boston when Jonquel Jones was all in her face? Was she anywhere nearby? Because that's a two-way street, okay? We have to remember that these are new teams. This is a new team, right? And so the same camaraderie she had to work with to build with her Iowa teammates, you have to work to build that. That goes both ways, right? And so I don't know that. I'm not suggesting that her teammates don't like her. That's not what I'm saying. But you notice already with the Chicago Sky that connection that they have, that fun, that unity. And we don't see that with the Fever. And that could just be because they have a jam-packed schedule. That could be they haven't had a lot of time together. There could be a lot of reasons for that. But what I'm saying is that tightness, that connection that you have because you went through battles together or you built a bond, that starts by interacting on and off the court. A lot of these other teams, you've seen it with the Sparks, you've seen it with Chicago. They're hanging out together. Outside of that, they're doing things together. They're going to places together, events together, right? And then there's what happens on the court. Do you remember with LSU how they would have Haley Van Lith's back? Like, that's because Haley would be all up in. If someone was up in something, if someone was trying to fight one of her teammates, she was there. She was over there trying to fight for them. In the media, she said, media, you talk about me differently than you talk about my black teammates. I want to be clear. Catlin doesn't have to do those things. But if you don't think those kind of things endear you to your teammates, you would be mistaken. Asia Wilson was on a microphone talking to Kelsey saying, you know what I like about Paige Beckers? You know, she gets it like you do, right? And that's in reference to how Paige speaks up on behalf of black women in women's basketball. And Kelsey does as well. Asia is on a mic thanking her and saying how much that means. Again, I'm not saying Catlin Clark has to do that. You don't. But your fans are really harassing, you know, your teammates and saying a lot of coded and racist things to them. And your family members and your partner are liking some tweets and things that are not appropriate, and we have heard nothing from you. So all of that is felt. Whether it's discussed, all of that is felt. And absolutely. And when people say like, why does she have to do this? This doesn't happen. Well, that's the difference between the NBA or other leagues. The WNBA is a league where you have the intersection of race, sex, and gender. There are unique issues to the W. And so what happens in the men's league, what happens in the other league is not here. So this is how this league is, right? And this is a very progressive league. They have a history of standing up to things, fighting things politically, speaking out. This is a league that has a history of being ultra progressive. So she doesn't have to do that. And no one's going to say you have to. But if you don't understand sometimes why she may not have the same connection with her teammates as others do, it could be a variety of things. It could be that. It could be that they're just young. It could be that they don't get to hang out together. It could be the schedule. It could be a variety of things. But understand the whole sticking up for teammates and going hard for them, that is a mutual thing. It takes mutual effort among teammates. It's not one way. So don't expect them to just do for Catlin without expecting her to do back for them in return.
Just two things to that point. I mean, you mentioned Aaliyah Boston essentially being scapegoated. It's happened just not for standing up for Catlin Clark, but also for her play on the court. Like, they're going to make her a scapegoat. And so I think what you're getting at is people are they're wanting her to do something that, like, as you said earlier, it's not her role to do. But I think there's another layer, which this is something you've said before. Like, she is also a star. Like, she is also a star. It's not necessarily her job to, like, fulfill the role of fully emotionally and, like, physically supporting Catlin in whatever interaction that she may or may not get involved in. So that's one thing. Like,
a young star, as you pointed out,
right,
a young,
like,
only her second
exactly.
year.
I mean, and she's a number one overall pick, like number one overall pick, just like Catlin. And she's a national champion out of South Carolina. Like, that, she is a star. Like, so I think that that's something that we keep on kind of like skirting past. And so I want to make sure that that point that you made, or like, that is just clear. And I think there's another thing about the team dynamic, which, again, we cannot say, we don't know what the team dynamic is. We don't know because we're not in the locker room, and that's fine. However, I recently revisited a profile that was written about Catlin in her last year at Iowa, and that story referenced a moment in practice where Catlin was like so upset with her teammates, and she, like, I guess was confronted by Kate Martin and confronted by other people, like, listen, you got to pass the ball, you got to do this. And she's like, why am I going to pass the ball? And I know they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. Like, I think that Catlin, and you even see it in the documentary that ESPN recently released, like, she'll cuss in the locker room, like, are you effing kidding me? They're not better than us, blah, blah, blah. I think there is a sense of, like, power, right, that she had in that Iowa locker room. Not, I think, I know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know she had a lot of power. She was the biggest star on that team. And she is still, by and large, the biggest star on the Fever. But this is the big leagues now.
Based on popularity. You not your actual ability. Exactly. And I want to make that clear.
Right. No, and that's exactly what I'm saying. So thank you for that clarification. But you can't come now in the big leagues. You're not going to intimidate these players. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's probably not going to go and cuss at these players for, like, in that type of thing. There's a different dynamic. And so I think that's another layer to this. Like, that's not to say that she's coming in with a bad attitude or anything like that. She just has to adjust the same way that, like, she's got to adjust in a lot of ways, which is exactly, I mean, I hate how we keep
build rapport with your teammates.
Exactly.
You have to work at it. And so, these are new teammates, and they don't automatically think of you as the head girl in charge. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, you got to build that.
Works. So I think that that's a huge part of this. And that's not to say that she won't develop it. Like, absolutely. Again, we keep on saying, this is going to be a transition. We're seeing the transition play out. And that's not to say she's not playing well. Like, I think she's doing everything she's supposed to do on the court, genuinely. Like, and in terms of how she's performing, this is not anything less than what I expected. You know, like, she's doing what she's supposed to do. So now it's like all these other conversations and all of the, like, we don't need to make all these judgments about everybody else. Like, if we're going to talk about Catlin, let's just talk about Catlin. Like, but we don't got to make judgments and be racist and sexist and all this stuff. At least if you're going to make discussion, like, if you're going to join discussions about this league, just be aware of exactly what you said. There are a whole bunch of factors at play. Like, just be aware and move accordingly. And I think we'd all be better for it.
There you go. Listen, there's always more to talk about, but we're going to end it here. We're going to have more conversations about this and more time to elaborate. So Callie Lawson-Freeman, I appreciate you joining me.